Hi there folks, my name is Novawing24 and welcome to another Microsoft Flight Simulator product review, and today we are having a look at this neat, nifty little aerobatic aircraft, the American Super Decathlon for Microsoft Flight Simulator by the team over at Hangar Studios 713. So we're going to be having a look at this nifty little aircraft. It's been out a little bit, but I do want to take a chance to be able to give it a bit of an in-depth review, and we're going to be doing that in a fairly different way today. Well, it's going to be much the same with a bit of a unique flair to it. But before we get too far into this review video, I do want to say a huge shout out and a huge thank you to the team over at Hangar Studio 713 and the team over at Orbx for providing me with the review copy of this aircraft today. So we're going to be going through, we're going to be doing the sort of standard review format. We're going to be going through, we're going to be having a look at the external of the model. We're going to be going through a cold and dark startup of it, and then we're going to be going through a bit of a test flight, but then we're going to be joined by a special guest for reviewing some of the unique aspects of this aircraft. But we're going to get to that a little bit later in the video. So let's go through our standard sort of start now. We're going to be going through having a look at the external model. And we're having a look at the external model here. It is done by the team, the studio at 713. They are, I was going to say they're sort of a newcomer, but they're definitely fairly well established now by a fairly unique range of smaller GA aircraft, which they've done very, very well in the past. And this is the latest addition to their lineup here. And like looking at the 3D model, like I really love the detail they've gone through this one. The normal mapping and actually sort of giving it life to the airframe of the model, they've done really, really well. They've got it looks like a Super Decathlon, an 8K cab model of this aircraft, which is a fairly unique sort of aircraft in its design, its philosophy. It started off life, it evolved out of the earlier 7K cab, which was a utility and GA and training aircraft, and the 8K cab sort of grew from that with a desire for pilots and the aviation community to form an aircraft which is more suitable for performing more aerobatic focused training and aerobatic capabilities of it, particularly in terms of outside maneuvers or positive G, negative G and positive G maneuvers. And you can see some of those features in some of the design features of the aircraft, such as the aerobatic sort of marker here on the side to help the pilots, help guide the pilot during various maneuvers. Now the team have definitely captured the external model very well. I kind of like I always like the addition of the tie downs being controlled here, which we can control from in the cockpit, which we'll show in a little bit. But overall, the external model is done very, very nicely, which is always great to see. But without any further ado, let's jump into the cockpit and let's get ourselves started up into flight. Alright, so here we are in the office of the Super Decathlon, and it is a fairly Spartan office, as you can probably imagine from this aircraft. You know, the aircraft was first designed in the 1960s, produced in the 1960s, 1970s, and then had a revitalization later on in the early 2000s, once the design was passed through several owners' hands and ended up in its current hands, and the production line restarted. So it is an aircraft that you do see around, mostly in America, but internationally as well. In fact, there is a very famous example flying around the UK, funnily enough, with the courtesy of one of its former owners. And this aircraft design, it's fairly basic and fairly simple, and construction fairly simple, but they've captured it very, very well here in terms of this. Now, in terms of this particular product release for Microsoft Flight Simulator, you do get 3 different cockpit options. So this one is the analog cockpit version, which is the version that I'm drawn to. It's the kind of style of flying that I personally prefer. But you do get 2 glass cockpit versions, so 2 sort of modernized glass cockpit versions, which both hinge around the working title Garmin G3X native avionics, coupled with the Garmin GTN, the PMS GTN 650-750 external add-on, which is available. Now, I do want to stress something about that. Now, this is a sort of a PC add-on, but it is for our Xbox family members. You have not been forgotten. For available on Xbox, there is a version of the PMS GTN 650, which is included packaged with the aircraft. So you are not, so Xbox family, you have not been left out of this add-on, which I do want to give a huge shout out to both the team over at PMS and the team over at Hangar Studios for doing that, because one of the things is that it's often maligned or sort of, lamented with our Xbox family is that they often feel somehow like they miss out on some add-ons. So it's great to see developers working together to ensure our Xbox family are not forgotten. So, huge shout out, huge kudos to the team over at Hangar Studios and PMS for actually joining forces together to make sure our Xbox family are not forgotten. Now, speaking of with this one, so you do have in this this analog version, you do get the standard Gamma GNS 430 there. But if you do want to swap it out, if you do have the GTN 650 available, you can swap it out for the GTN 650 if you do have that add-on available from the team over at PMS. As I said, or if you do prefer to have the glass cockpit feel with the big G3X in the center there, you do have that option by choosing that from the main menu. All right, so going through the clipboard here, the original first, Mark 1 EFB, you do have a couple of options here. So this forces the pilot and the co-pilot models to be visible. Otherwise, the co-pilot model is weight sensitive. So if I quickly bring that up here, we can see that here, that if I do load any weight into here, so if I do put 170 pounds into the co-pilot seat, we can see, if I jump to the external view, you can see that our co-pilot then appears, but the internal co-pilot is controlled from the clipboard here. But I am going to be flying without a co-pilot today, so I'm just going to remove that weight. There we go. That's good, because we're going to be doing a few aerobatics in a little bit, and I do want to remove that from the back there. Harness swap essentially forces whether the harnesses are visible or not. Tie downs do what they say on the tin. Same with the cargo net, sort of visible at the back there. I'll leave the cargo net turned on. Tie downs would turn off because we're about to start flight. The smoke button here. So this will be very important for when we do some flying and is one of my few bugbears with this aircraft, but we'll talk to that more when we get into the air and do some aerobatics on that one. All right, so we'll put that clipboard away and we'll go through our start sequence checklist. Now, again, a huge shout out to the team. Again, I know this is something that I harp on a lot in all of my reviews, is a fully populated in-sim checklist. So I do want to say a shout out and acknowledgement to the team for actually populating this one and doing this one available. I'm looking at this and going, this aircraft is probably going to be, I'm not going to say, obviously I'm reviewing this in Microsoft Flight Simulator, not the upcoming 2024 edition, which at time of recording is still a few days away, but this looks like they are definitely preparing themselves for that eventuality once it becomes available. But let's go through our start checklist and get ourselves into the air. So harnesses are secured. Okay, so we checked that one. Parking brake is set, checked. All switches set to off, checked. Down is off. Cockpit door closed and secured. So let's close our cockpit door. Locked and latched. Checked. Radios, electrical are all off. Now this is actually something that again is one of the few bugbears that I have. So we're going to turn this one to the off position. There we go. So just so you can see, that is all set to the off position. Check. Right. Fuel valve is on. It defaults to on. Yeah. I'm not going to sort of, that's the off position. So it is set to on. Check. Pre-flight checklist complete. All right, on to starting engine. Battery master switch set to on. Mixture set to full rich. Check. Electric fuel pump on. So I see the pump go on. Fuel flow doesn't peak at all, doesn't adjust at all, which is a bit of an oddity, but a bit weird. Anyway, moving on. So check that set. Prop control lever set to max RPM. Check. Throttle 1/4 inch open. Check. Left ignition set to on. Mags on. And starter push to engage, engine on, right mag on, throttle adjust to 1000 RPM, check, oil pressure is good, everything is set, we are good to go. Starting checklist complete. Alright, cabin door is still latched and secured. We're good there. Lights as needed. Alright, so we're going to put our nav lights on. We're going to put our landing lights on. Now, something that you might notice here. So, a couple of things that you might notice here. So, first of all, it says Avionics Master Switch set to on. So, currently, the Avionics Master Switch is set to off. And this should be set to off, and yet my GPS unit has come on. So this is a unique quirk to the analog version of this aircraft. So this does not happen if you use the glass cockpit versions of this aircraft. If you use the glass cockpit versions, then the avionics is controlled by the avionics master switch. So, you know, with that in the off position, they don't work. But weird bug is that in the, and this is repeatable across other fellow virtual aviators who've got this I've checked with have confirmed that they also have this same behavior. And that for some reason, the Garmin, the GPS unit is hardwired to on in the analog version. Weird thing, I know, but it is something that I have noticed and I did want to point out in the review. Alright, let's check our flight controls, free and correct. Yeah, good. Everything is set, we're good to go there. Okay, doing our GPS unit while it gathers and it does our calibrations there. Alright, so just do a quick check of everything here. So we are all good here. Everything is good. So we'll just do our run-up test before we go. So parking brake release. Brakes checked. Parking brake back on. Okay, rudder check. Okay. Parking brake on. Alright, we'll check our RPMs up to 2100 RPM. Alright, we'll do our mag checks. RPM drop confirmed. RPM drop confirmed. Okay, bring it back down to 1500 RPM. Okay, we'll cycle through the propeller. Cycle back through. Okay, we are good there, and bring the throttle back down to idle. The idle check. You can see that the amps are struggling, so you've obviously got a high draw when you do have the throttle at idle. So there's something to be aware in a lot of these smaller aircraft, is that the alternator sort of really only sort of works once the RPMs are at a reasonable height. What's also cool is that I've currently got the landing light on and set to pulse, so you can see that once I switch that over to steady, the actual ampage does stay steady. So again, it's a really small detail, but a kind of cool thing to actually check and actually see working in the aircraft like that. Like, I know it's something that most people would probably never notice, but it's something that I love to see, that attention to detail in the aircraft. Alright, okay, so we'll do it's ready for our before takeoff checklist, so we'll be taxiing out before we do rerun that, so let's do that. Alright, throttle idle, parking brake release. We'll taxi out to do our lineup. Very responsive on the ground, this aircraft is, surprisingly so, actually. Alright, so before takeoff checklist here, so parking brake is on. Parking brake is set. Flight controls, recheck those, still free and correct. very excellent color choice in this one. You do get a number of liveries to choose from. All liveries are shared across all 3 cockpit variants of the aircraft. Most of them are all based on real-world liveries of the aircraft, with a couple of nods to community members, with community family members, which is always fun to see. All right, control stick full aft mixture full rich, and prop RPM to max. So prop RPM set to max, mixture full rich, because we are I'm not going to say we're too high, but we definitely get a full rich mixture for this takeoff here. And prop the max RPM. So our normal takeoff will be prop full forward, fuel pump on, alternate air set to cold, which it is. Okay, throttle full, instruments within the green arc, and then take off once energy. She should climb straight into the air. And climb out, lean for return. There's nothing real there. Climb out altitude from the pilot operating handbook. We're looking for around about 70 miles per hour. For the climb out, which is something interesting as well, just a note as well. Like, most of us are used to talking in knots when we're talking about airspeed. Knots is on the inside of the dial here. On the outside is actually in miles per hour, and all the speeds in the pilot operating handbook are actually given in miles per hour. So random note for virtual aviators. Common thing in actually smaller GA aircraft like this. All right, let's release our parking brake. Let's taxi out onto the runway. Alright. Should be good to go. Alright. Throttle forwards. Controls neutral. And tiniest bit of back pressure on the stick to bring to climb, and we're going to be shooting for climb speed of around about 70 miles per hour, so you can get quite a significant climb rate on this aircraft from takeoff with a climb speed of 70 miles an hour. Like, you're getting 2,500 feet per minute on the climb. Like, she just wants to fly. She really does. Very smooth on the takeoff roll, but as a light aircraft, any kind of wind at altitude, she does get quite buffety. So the aircraft does serve primarily as a trainer, but this version more as an aerobatics and an aerobatics trainer, aerobatics aircraft, and entry-level aerobatics aircraft, and an aerobatics trainer, which of course, you know, means that she can put through quite a few maneuvers. In fact, you actually get the little placard at the front of the aircraft. Doesn't just give your VREF speeds, it actually talks about various different maneuvers and the entry speeds in terms of miles per hour and stuff like that. So we'll get up here to altitude here. She does trim out quite nicely as well. Once you get her straight and level, she does trim out quite nicely. So let's have a quick look on the outside. If I've got it trimmed out properly, let's jump out, have a quick look here at the outside. Of course, you know, at that point I get a bit of a gust of wind. So she does respond to gusts of wind like that quite significantly. Let's jump out and have a quick look at the exterior now that we're in flight. So it's a small, light aircraft. Like, she looks good in the air. I mean, not that there's much difference between her in the air and her on the ground. Seeing her in her natural habitat is always good to see. As I said, like, you can see that, you know, as a GA aircraft, like, she trims out quite nicely, but she will, like, respond to atmospheric occurrences. So we'll get a bit of a gust of wind coming in there from the west, so she will sort of take that lean and get that air coming in under her wings there, pushing her around. But she always looks good. Nice little bit of engine heat coming out of the engine exhaust there. But I do want to take a moment just to talk about the smoke system. I did mention that briefly there. Now we'll have to quickly jump back in the cockpit to correct this turn. So just quickly correct that turn there. Alright, so I did talk about the smoke system. So the smoke system of the aircraft, obviously as an aerobatic aircraft, it will, it does have a smoke system in there, which is kind of important to have. And you've got the smoke notification light there on the center of the dash. Okay, fine. I just realized I never actually turned my radios on once I actually took off. That's probably not good. Anyway, so you do have the smoke notification light to let you know when the smoke system is on. So my tiny bugbear that I have is that there is a breaker for the smoke system, but there's no activation switch for the smoke system. I can't find one. I could not find one. I searched the documentation, I searched like study videos of the real aircraft, and I could not find where the smoke activation is. So the only place I found to actually find where to activate the smoke system is via the tablet, the Ensign tablet there. So I switch it on, I've got the notification light there that the smoke system is on, and if we take a look outside, we can see the smoke system is happily working away there, and it's actually quite a good smoke system as well on this one as well. It's got a good length of time on the smoke system as well, so you can actually perform some maneuvers. I wouldn't necessarily say that you'd be able to write a lot of stuff in the sky, but it definitely has enough that you can actually complete maneuvers and have them visible. That's the wrong pedal I'm looking at there. To actually complete maneuvers in the sky and actually see where you've actually drawn them through the sky. So for aerobatic, learning aerobatics as well as being able to compete in perhaps virtual aerobatic competitions, this aircraft and the smoke system in it are going to be a great system to actually show off. Now, the only, as I said, the bugbear that I have is the fact that, there's no switch for the smoke system. And also, if I pull the breaker on the smoke system, it doesn't kill the smoke. Now, I know how smoke systems work, so that shouldn't really be a thing anyway, but it was kind of one of those things where I thought, okay, if they put the breaker in the smoke system, maybe that's how I can turn the smoke system on and off. It is not the case. So that is something that is it's a really small thing. It's not going to affect a lot of things, but it's just a minor bugbear. I went through the documentation. I couldn't see anywhere where I can bind it to a keybind. I couldn't bind it to anything, obvious that this is what I could do with it. But so that did throw me a little bit. It did annoy me a little bit. But it is something that I did notice, and I did want to make people aware of, just like the avionics thing. Is it really going to affect your your experience, your flying? Probably not, but it is something to be aware of. So there you go. All right, let's do, of course, as I said, this aircraft is an aircraft that is it is all about aerobatics and aerobatics and aerial performances. So let's see if I can make a mess of some aerobatic maneuvers here. So we're going to put on our smoke system. Okay, smoke system is on. Now for entry level, so we're looking at here. Let's have a look. So pretty much most things coming in at 160. So do our hammerhead turn 140 knots. All right. So power up 140 knots. Sorry, 140 miles per hour. Sorry, it says I'm very used to talking in knots and rather than miles per hour. So up to the top. Okay. Turn through the 90 and back over the top. Roll out. Oop. A little bit squirrely there at the top of that Immelman. Alright, we'll build our speed back up again. So we'll start into Cuban 8. So here, up and over. Coming back through smoke. I went through the bottom of the smoke and I've gone a little bit off center line. Not great. So definitely that's 100% pilot error coming in, sort of the bit of wayward off a couple of degrees there. We've got a couple of maneuvers done. Now the ones that I have a bit of trouble now, I have a bit of trouble with a number of maneuvers. So what I have done is I've actually enlisted the help of a fellow virtual aviator who is far more experienced with aerobatics to talk me through how they found this handling of this aircraft. So let's go have a chat with Razor. Righty folks, to talk about the part that I am quite frankly not that good at is of course the aerobatics, which is probably the most important part about this add-on aircraft. I am joined by Razor from the DCS World Blue Angels, who is an expert in aerobatic flight, and I've been fortunate enough to know Razor for many, many years, so welcome Razor to this review.
Hello, glad to be here.
Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you very much for taking the time to explore the aerobatic capabilities and tendencies of the decathlon here with us. So, Razor, I'd like to go through with you your experience because I've got some very basic, very rudimentary knowledge and quite frankly ability when it comes to virtual aerobatics. But I did want to know the thoughts of yourself as absolutely, I'm going to call you. You are an expert in this field. You've been doing it for as long as I've known you, which is many years now, and of course across multiple platforms, including the legacy ESP ones, into DCS World, and of course into the current Microsoft Flight Simulator, and a variety of aircraft, variety of platforms. So, what has your been experience? Because again, with my limited knowledge, I thought that this aircraft, did some things really well, but some things I definitely questioned. So, I'd like to hear your thoughts about some of the maneuvers that this aircraft is known for.
I would agree with that. I think it does a lot of things quite well, a lot better than most aircraft do in particularly the old ESP platform, and then even in 2020 now. Certainly quite a step above the default extra that's in 2020, and pretty on par with a lot of the other add-ons that are out there for aerobatic flight in MSFS 2020. So I think there's a lot of things it does really well. There's a few things that I won't say it does not do well because I haven't flown a decathlon in real life. I have no actual aerobatic experience in real life, so I will still pass that on to someone that has more experience. But from the amount of time I have flown aerobatics in various flight sims, I think it does pretty well. There's a few things that I question, I would say, particularly when it comes to like a hammerhead stall or hammerhead turn, depending on how you want to say that, and then a couple other things. But generally, I think it does a pretty good job. So I think we have a couple of videos here that we'll go ahead and go through here in a minute.
Okay, so let's go through those because I know that there's a couple of maneuvers which this aircraft was especially designed to do as a evolution of the previous 7K cab from the same manufacturer, focusing on outside maneuvers and possibly for some of the more less aerobatically inclined viewers and virtual aviators out there, what makes a maneuver when people refer to it as an outside maneuver?
Yeah, so an inside maneuver is going to be anything, generally, is going to be anything with positive G on it. So when you're pulling back and the airplane's climbing, or in reference to the attitude it's climbing, so you're putting positive G on, and then an outside maneuver is the opposite of that. So those are the ones that typically hurt a lot more as a pilot. So you're pushing, and that's a negative G. So instead of all the blood moving to your feet like it does in a positive G maneuver or a inside maneuver, it actually moves to your head. So that's why you would see stuff about redding out instead of graying out or blacking out in an outside maneuver. So an outside is just pushing to negative G.
Okay, so let's go through some of the captured experience that you've had with this aircraft, and let's talk through some of those videos.
Sure. So what I did is I took the manual that comes with the aircraft and the documentation folder, and I just kind of went through the list of maneuvers. So I think the first thing I have here is just a loop, and then we had an Immelman and a hammerhead turn. So we'll just kind of jump through those real quick here. And kind of look at those and give a little bit of quick synopsis of what I found on those. But generally, they seem to be pretty good.
So just going through this maneuver, this is obviously pretty much a crowd standard that we're going to go through with a loop.
Yep, exactly. So just a pretty bog standard loop, if you will. So just straight back on the stick, and then climb through the vertical and then back through the bottom. So pretty straightforward, pretty much what you would expect here. So the one thing that I did with all these maneuvers to start with is I just started 1,000 feet hard deck. So that means that 1,000 feet is what we're referring to as the ground. So generally that's what you're going to do in aerobatics in real life is you start normally higher than that. I think it's 2,000 feet in the US when you first start. So you can't go below that altitude. And if you did, that would be a simulation, if you will, of you going into the ground. So obviously you don't want that. But that's a good reference point to start when you're starting with a new aircraft or a new aerobatic maneuver and all that. So you start higher so that you know, hey, here's my limit, and I'm not going to go below that. And if I do, then we need to reevaluate the maneuver. So loop was pretty straightforward. So we'll move into the Emmelman here.
And for reference as well, for people who are watching this review video and wanting to get into aerobatics as well, the use of things like hard decks when you're learning, because of course, this aircraft is designed as a aerobatic aircraft, but not as an aerobatic aircraft, but as a training aerobatic aircraft. So this is the kind of airframe that you would be doing in real life to actually, learn these maneuvers.
Yep, exactly. All right, so this one's just an Emmelman. It's basically a loop, except we're going to stop at the top and roll out of it. So again, the same thing. Pretty straightforward, as you would expect. Does pretty good. Didn't quite put in the right control input there, so we rolled off heading a little bit, but straightforward. Does that one perfectly fine. All right, so this one, another pretty standard maneuver. So this is the hammerhead or hammerhead turn. So we're going to go straight up. We're going to wait till we get to about 40 knots, then kick the rudder to the left. And you can see we get stuck a little bit at about 90 or so. That's one where I would kind of have to hand it over to the real pilots that have flown at Decathlon to kind of see if that's accurate, if there's an airspeed that we're missing there. So I'm doing a little early or a little late. I'm not entirely sure. I tried with a number of different airspeeds, and it didn't seem to like many of them. Did about the same thing. Some were worse, some were better. But that seemed to be my experience with it. So that's one that I have a little bit of a question on. I'm not sure that it's not accurate, but I'm not sure it's 100% accurate either.
And I noticed on that one with the roll there, like with the rollout, it looked like it was more spongy than I would expect. Like having done some, the aircraft can snap roll quite well, and yet at some of those points where I would expect to still have that. Snappiness, for want of a better term, of where I would expect to have it, I seem to get a lot more sponginess than perhaps I would expect from the velocity and the position in the maneuver.
Yeah, I think I would tend to agree with that. And so on that point, so the airplane does snap roll pretty well. I just looked up a couple of videos to see some people doing it in real life in a decathlon to kind of try to figure out what the control inputs are. We can see it snaps pretty well there. So I do one to the left and then we'll do one to the right. So again, missing some control inputs there. If I spent a fair bit more time, probably could figure that out a little bit, but we were a bit uncoordinated. But it does snap pretty well. So this one, this is a maneuver I haven't seen a whole lot. I think it's more of a competition maneuver, but this is a English bunt. So we're going to push the nose forward. So it's kind of like an outside loop. It's just half of an outside loop. So we start from altitude, just push through. You can see it does it. Does it pretty well. This is one that I think, Nova, you had a little bit of difficulty trying to figure out. And I think that's just, it's a very finicky maneuver, if you will. You have to be very particular about how you push, and you can't over push. I do have an example of what happens if you over push, which you might be able to find one as well.
We'll definitely show quite a few examples of how not to do it.
Yeah, so we'll start this one here. So again, same thing, started from the same altitude, same airspeed roughly, and then we're just going to over push a little bit too much here, and then you'll see the left wing snap down, and then we're going to roll out of it so that we don't continue to have issues there. So that is where, having a hard deck and flying from altitude is a big deal. You definitely want to try to do that when you're first learning an airplane, because you could see there I was still 1,000 feet above the hard deck just about, and then I was 2,000 feet above the ground. So you're not worried about, making a little mistake and then having an issue. So that's why we do that.
Oh, absolutely, and I can 100%, back that from someone with actual flying time experience. When we were going through, ground school, and when I was going into preparing for flight, whenever we would be doing maneuvers, one of the things that was drilled into us ad nauseum was, before you even contemplate any type of aerobatic maneuvers, you absolutely go into the sufficient, altitude sufficient for recovery. That was stated at least twice in the checklist before you started any of those maneuvers. It would be, ensure altitude safe for, is sufficient for recovery at the start of the checklist, and then before you even then again in the checklist before you actually execute the maneuver, you had to recheck your altitude for that exact reason, to make sure that you can recover and that you are operating in a safe way, which is just as valid whether you're flying a real airplane or a virtual airplane. The virtual airplanes are obviously cheaper to repair, but it is a good practice to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think even anyone that has a fair bit of flight experience, even a couple hours, you probably have seen the same thing. You go to do your first couple spin or stalls, excuse me, and you go up to an altitude 2, 3, 4,000 feet normally, so that you have that altitude just in case you develop into a spin, because flight instructors normally are going to let you do that on your first few. Just say, hey, this is why I tell you to make sure you keep the ball centered or you keep coordinated.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely right.
All right, so this one we have another example. It's basically the same thing as the bunt, except we're going to go all the way through. So this would be a outside loop. So again, we're going to slow down to about 60 or 70 knots here, somewhere in that range. We're from 3,000 feet, and then we're going to push. And then the main difference you'll see here is we're going to have to add in power to make the backside of the loop. But when we do that, we're going to push the nose down a little bit. So we end up almost redding out here, right there. We have to back off a little bit and then push again. And then we'll get all the way through the top here, and we get a little bit of a drift there, drift off to the left, but one of those you just practice a bit.
I think that's a great sign as well, showing that, each aircraft is unique, whether it be in real life or whether it be in flight sim, that each aircraft is unique in its characteristics, which I think is a positive, because it goes to show that, this isn't a cookie cutter flight model. This isn't just, they've just, your earlier comment about, it's better than the extra. It's not like they've just taken the extra's flight model and dropped it in this. There is specific work that's been done here that we can see, and that's great to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can see some stuff where they probably have tried to do as best they can, and then there's a little bit of limitation with 2020's capability in terms of flight modeling. And I think it'll be interesting to see if they upgrade that to 2024, and that gives them a little bit more capability out of it. Because I have noticed that in a couple places. Spins, I think, is the other one that you and I have discussed a little bit, that we'll look at here in a second. That I think that might be something that's a sim-ism, if you will, as we like to say. So we'll look at that one here in a second. So like I said, we'll look at the spin here. So we're just going to get into a stall, full aft stick, and then into the spin. So it's left rudder in this case. So we get a little bit of a drop. It starts to look like a spin, develop into a spin, and then it kind of mushes here. Which I don't think is accurate based on either the spins that I've done in real life in 172s or what I've seen from Aerobatics and even decathlon videos. But again, that could be something that I'm doing incorrectly. It could be a parameter that I'm missing, or it could be a flight simism that it's not quite accurate on 2020's side.
Yeah, that would also be, it's sort of, my experience was that the spins and stalls seem to be, sometimes the spins definitely I could never get those quite right, and the stalls seem to they were either quite harsh or they were not. So it was like, okay, that doesn't seem like a stall. So yeah, interesting that we relaying your experience, and thanks very much for going through those and taking the time to bring your expertise to that. Your overall thoughts of the decathlon from Hangar Studios 713 for a budding aerobatic pilot.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's a good start. It gets you accustomed to making sure you can't go full aft stick, if you will. You can't pull as hard as you can, like maybe in the Rhino, the F-18 in 2020, and just go ham and pull as hard as you can and all that. Like if you do that, you're not going to have a enjoyable time. You have to be aware of what the airplane is capable of. Even in the manual, it says you can't do aggressive maneuvering above maneuvering speed, which I believe is 132 knots in aerobatic mode or aerobatic configuration. And that's for that reason. You don't want to overstress the airplane. So I think that it's a good intro into making sure that you understand some of the concepts of aerobatic flight, and that you can't just push as hard or pull as hard as you want. And you get a good idea of, hey, this is what it looks like when you're approaching a stall or a stalling a single wing or whatever. Get a little bit of buffeting, and you kind of get an idea of that. So I think it's a good intro. And then, there's some other aircraft that might be out there that you can take a look at if you enjoy this. And it's a good little intro airplane.
Cool. Sound great. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, Razor, for joining us once again, and thank you very much for taking the time to apply your expertise and your skills and your knowledge to this out on aircraft. And thanks very much for joining us on this review.
Absolutely. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So this aircraft is definitely a fun little aircraft to fly, and it definitely has a lot of potential in terms of its capabilities to teach things to pilots. I know that I have definitely, sort of learned a lot more about my piloting skills while just by making this review video, and I think it's always great to be able to challenge yourself with different types of aircraft, which I think is why we all look for different types of aircraft from time to time, and I think this aircraft is definitely no exception to that rule. In terms of its performance, if you're not into the aerobatics, more just into your normal GA flyer, she handles very, very well. She holds a steep turn quite nicely as well. She can hold a steep turn really, really well. As you saw, as earlier, the trimming out, she trims out to a fairly stable amount of flight really quite easily with not a lot of effort at all, and you do manage to hold on to a lot of performance at a lot of altitude, and it flies really like a GA sort of aircraft should. Now, you do have to watch a few things, such as even just in this steep turn, for example, you do have to sort of, watch the angle of your stick and your controls, or she can get away from you. But in terms of that, it is fairly forgiving in terms of how she will treat you, as long as you respect the aircraft, like any aircraft as well. So let's take a moment now to find ourselves our airport for our landing, which I do believe actually should be fairly close by, if I'm looking at my GPS correctly. We always look at this from the other side of things. And again, which one of the cool things as well is that they modeled the inverted flight model pretty well in this aircraft as well. Like, she will do inverted flight with the fuel pump on. You do have to remember to have the fuel pump on if you are flying inverted flight, but she will do the inverted flight as she is supposed to in this aircraft. So we'll just pull through. I'm looking. I should have an airport around here somewhere. I'm going to find or I may not be able to believe the GPS. I don't know. We'll have to see. But let's take a break here, and we'll find our airport that we're going to land at, and we'll do our approach and landing and see how she is, because it is a tail dragger, so which are always a fun experience to land in tail draggers. Right, entering crosswind here at S43, coming in for our landing. We're going to be doing a crosswind landing today, which is going to be interesting in this aircraft. So tail draggers are always fun to try and land because they are one of the aircraft where you literally, there's essentially two ways to land tail draggers. Is that you can either fly them down onto their main gear, or you try for a 3-point landing, but using essentially stalling it onto all 3 gear at the same time. Now, one of the interesting things about this aircraft, because of its design as a aerobatic aircraft, it actually doesn't have any flaps, which of course is what we normally use on landing to help slow us down, give us plenty of lift while operating at low speeds. So therefore, this aircraft actually has a somewhat higher than normal approach speed of coming in at 70 miles an hour, which is roughly good at about 70 knots. So you do have a higher approach speed than you might be used to in something of a similar size, or something like an X-Cub, for example. You do have a higher approach speed, so you do have a bit of a higher descent speed as well. So we're coming in for this one. We're going to be coming in for this one, trying to keep it on. I'm going way too fast here. Might have to go around on this one, I think. Yeah, I'm definitely not comfortable with where I am. A bit too high speed on that one, so we're going to go around on this one. I'm going to do power on, positive rate, rejoin the pattern. I'm not going to do a full brake from the pattern. We're going to go brake straight into our downwind. Get myself a bit more established, a bit better this time. Probably really talk too much on the extended downwind. Is that, let's be honest, that's exactly what it was that I did. All right. So we're going to bring that power back. And it is one of the challenges that you have for, learning new aircraft is, getting the timings and the speeds and the like all correct. So we're going to retrim ourselves out. Keep bringing down that airspeed. So we're shooting for around about 70 miles an hour on the approach there. So watching the power. Watching the descent rate. That was definitely a little uncoordinated on that turn there. Okay, so we can use our power. You can see also, you can see with the windsock here, the wind is significantly off to the side there. So the crosswind approach of this is going to be a bit more fun than I'd originally planned. Going to be a long landing. I'm going to kick that rudder in. Stick all the way back to keep the tail on the ground. All right. Well, we cleared before the landing distance available, so I will call that a success. We can then taxi off the runway now. We'll park up. We'll shut the aircraft down, and we'll give our final thoughts on the Super Decathlon from Hangar Studios 713. Fun little thing that it is. Right. Always fun when you're trying to taxi a tail dragger, because the challenge of not being able to see over your engine makes every taxiing a fun and unique experience. All right. Oh look, there's even another Decathlon there waiting for us. Oh, how about that? Okay. Let's park up. Probably should come in on the other taxiway for that one. So you know what, we'll cut through here and we'll park up next to the other Decathlon that's there. That'll be a nice nice fitting end, I think. All right, let's taxi around. Taxiing up. All right. And brakes on. Parking brake set. Throttle closed. Mixture idle cut off. Fuel cut. Pump off. All right. And mags off. Nav lights off. Landing lights off. Avionics master off. Battery master is set to off. All right. And we can open up our door. Set our tie downs. And we can jump out and we can give our final thoughts. So, final thoughts on the Super Decathlon from Hangar Studios 713. Look, overall, this is a pretty good aeroplane. I think that the detail and the modeling is really, really good. Like the things like seeing the spar and the rivet lines and the construction of the aircraft, actually visible in the model is something that we see it, but then again, sometimes we don't see it. Like being able to see the ribs of the spar, of the wing, of the rivet lines where things are panelled together on the control surfaces. It is always great to see that level of detail. Seeing the different avionics options that we've been given to us by the developer is also really, really good. The support for across Xbox as well as PC, again, great to see the developers actually working together to provide make our flight simming hobby inclusive for as many people as possible, especially with our Xbox family. Inclusion of different, multiple different types of cockpit setups and avionics setups, also a really great thing to see. In terms of the performance and the modeling, look, they have done a pretty solid job, I have to say. The couple of quirks and bugbears that I've found, that I've pointed out throughout this video here, I'm not going to say they're showstoppers, because they are fairly minor things that, you know, they're either workarounds, or I'm sure are going to be fixed in something minor that I'm sure will be fixed in a future bug somewhere. I look forward to seeing this in the upcoming sim as well. Hopefully we'll see a 2024 version that will include support all the 2024 exclusive features. But in the meantime, overall the team have done really, really well. A couple of things on the flight dynamics and the performance, as has been shared by myself and Bo Brazer earlier in the discussion in the video. Overall, the aerobatic performance is pretty solid for the most part. A couple of quirks here and there again, but neither Razor or myself have flown this aircraft in real life, so we'll have to defer to real life pilots for this one. A couple of them potentially simisms, as we talked about as well. But overall, this is still a really great aircraft, I think, for virtual aviators who are wanting to explore the possibility of doing more virtual aerobatics and learning how to do it. I think this airframe is a good place for you to start, particularly, better than suited than something like the Extra 330 that comes with the sim by default, because that's a fairly advanced is a fairly advanced aerobatic aircraft, and even comparing it to something like the Edge 540, which is also available as an add-on aircraft, they're advanced aerobatic aircrafts. There's not really a lot of entry points for aerobatics for users and virtual aviators wanting to try it out and try something new. And I think this is a good aircraft that will give you an option to do that if you are looking at going down that path. It will teach you a lot of things about the way to handle your aircraft at the edge of its performance envelope, and when to recognize things. Hey, if that maneuver is not safe to continue, that you can abort it, and it'll help you start to learn to recognize those things when you are doing your virtual aviation displays. So overall, I think it's a solid job. I think the team have done a solid job with this one. Couple of quirks, couple of bugbears, but nothing that would stop me from enjoying this aircraft and challenging myself to get better at, get good, as they say, at aerobatics. I think this is going to be something that is a bit of fun and something that would be inspiring for many future virtual aerobatic champions. So with that, folks, that does going to round out this review video. I do want to say a huge shout out, a huge thank you once again to the team over at Hangar Studios and at the team over at Orbx for providing me with a review copy of this aircraft. And don't forget, if you're wanting to add this one to your collection, you can pick this one up available now from Orbx Direct. Link in the description down below. And with that, folks, thanks very much for watching. Don't forget, as always, to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying these videos and want to see more. And of course, as always, you can catch up with me and all the things I'm up to between videos by following me on Facebook and on Twitter and on Twitch. Just search NovaWing24. And with that, folks, thanks very much for watching. Take care, safe skies to all, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.